2,500 years ago, in one Greek city, ordinary men did something almost no one had done before. They ruled themselves. No king, no emperor, no pharaoh. Just the people, deciding by vote. This is a single day in ancient Athens, the city that invented democracy. A place of dazzling art and fearless thought, but also of slavery and silenced women. To walk its streets is to meet the brilliant, contradictory ancestor of our own world. So let us step into the morning and see how a citizen lived. Our Athenaion wakes at dawn in a modest mud brick house, plain and small, for even the rich lived simply here. He eats a little bread dipped in wine and steps out into narrow, winding streets. His destination is the heart of the city, the Agora, the open marketplace below the Acropolis. To be a citizen in Athens was not to stay home and mind your own business. It was to go out into public and take part in the life of the city. Privacy itself was almost suspect. The Agora is marketplace, newsroom, and meeting place, all at once. Stalls overflow with figs, olives, fish, and painted pottery. Money changers call out, slaves shop for their masters, and farmers haggle over the price of grain. But it is also where the city thinks out loud. Men gather in the shaded colonnades to trade gossip and argue politics. Philosophers stop passers-by. News travels mouth to mouth. For an Athenian, missing a morning in the Agora was missing the very pulse of the city. But today is special. The assembly is meeting. Our citizen joins a stream of men climbing the Pnyx, a bare hill near the Acropolis, where thousands gather in the open air. This is democracy in its rawest form. There are no professional politicians ruling from above. Any citizen may climb the speaker's platform and make his case on war, on grain, on law. Then, everyone decides together, by a simple show of hands, the will of the majority, counted in the sunlight, becomes the law of Athens. And it went further than we might expect. Most public officials were chosen not by election, but by lottery, drawn by lot from ordinary citizens. The Athenians distrusted permanent power and believed that ruling was the right and duty of every citizen, not just the clever, the famous, or the rich. A baker or a farmer might find himself, for a year, helping to run the state. They even had a machine, the Clerotarion, a slab of stone that randomized the draw, government by the luck of the draw. But we have to be honest about this democracy, because the word "the people" did not mean everyone. Only free adult men, born of Athenian parents, could vote, perhaps 10 to 20% of those living in the city. To them, this was natural, not scandalous. Citizenship was a jealously guarded privilege, not a universal right. The glory of Athens and its great blind spots were not separate things. They were two sides of the very same coin, and we cannot understand one without the other. Consider the women of Athens. A respectable wife had no political voice at all. Her world was the home, managing the household and the slaves, weaving cloth, raising children. Ideally, it was said, she should be spoken of as little as possible, whether in praise or in blame. She rarely appeared at public events, and when she went out, it was modestly and often accompanied. Half the free population lived politically, as if invisible, their labor essential, yet their voices entirely unheard in the assembly. And beneath everything lay slavery. Tens of thousands of enslaved people lived in Athens, captured in war or bought through trade. They worked the fields, the workshops, the homes, and, most brutally, the silver mines, where conditions were lethal. It was their unpaid labor that gave citizens the precious thing democracy demanded: free time. the leisure to argue, to vote, to think. Athenian freedom was real and revolutionary. But it stood, quite literally, on the unfreedom of others. The light and the shadow were inseparable. Yet in these same streets, something else was being born. A stonemason's son named Socrates wanders the Agora, stopping people with maddening questions. What is justice? What is courage? What is a good life? He claims to know nothing, and by patient questioning, exposes how little anyone truly understands. He writes no books and charges no fees. He simply talks. And in those conversations, Western philosophy is taking its first steps. Not in a library, but out loud, in the open, in argument. Learning in Athens happened in public. Wealthy young men paid teachers called sophists to train them in rhetoric, the art of persuasion, a vital skill where every law was won by speech. Others gathered around thinkers to debate mathematics, nature, and the cosmos. There were no grand universities yet, only minds meeting in the open. Ideas were tested by being spoken aloud and challenged on the spot. To be educated in Athens was not to memorize, but to argue well and to think on your feet. A few times a year, the whole city stops for the theater. Tens of thousands pour onto the slope of the Acropolis, into a vast open-air theater carved into the hillside. The plays are part entertainment, part religion, part politics. The great tragedies stage the deepest human questions: fate, justice, grief, and the will of the gods. Watching together was not just a night out. It was a civic and religious duty. The whole community gathered to feel and to think as one. But Athens also loved to laugh, and its comedies were savage. On the same stage, playwrights like Aristophanes mocked the city's most powerful men by name, while those very men sat in the audience. Generals, politicians, even the philosophers were ridiculed without mercy. It was free speech as blood sport, and the citizens roared with laughter. A democracy confident enough to laugh at its own leaders, in public, to their faces. Few societies before or since have dared to mock power quite so openly. Justice, too, belonged to the people. Athens had no professional judges or lawyers. Instead, juries were enormous. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of ordinary citizens, chosen by lot. Each side spoke for itself, timed by a water clock so no one could ramble on. Then the jurors voted, dropping bronze tokens into urns. There was no appeal. The collective judgment of the citizens was final. It was justice by the many, swift and direct, but also, as we will see, capable of terrible mistakes. The Athenians even had a way to remove a man who grew too powerful. Once a year, they could hold an ostracism. Each citizen scratched a name onto a shard of pottery, an ostracon. If enough names pointed to one man, he was exiled from the city for 10 years. No trial, no crime required. It was democracy defending itself against would-be tyrants. But it was also a blunt instrument, and a popular, talented man could be banished simply for being too admired. As night falls, the wealthier citizen reclines at a symposium, a private drinking party. Wine flows, always mixed with water, for the Athenians scorned drunkenness as barbaric. Reclining on couches, the men talk philosophy, recite poetry, play games, sing, and argue late into the night. It is exclusive and entirely male. But it is also an engine room of Athenian culture, where ideas, jokes, and politics ferment together over the cups. Some of the most famous philosophy ever written is set at just such a party. All of this belonged to a single dazzling moment, the golden age of Athens. Under the leadership of Pericles, the city rebuilt the Acropolis and raised the Parthenon, a temple of such perfect proportion it still defines beauty today. Sculpture, drama, history, and philosophy all flowered at once in one small city in a few short generations. Athens was not large or rich by the standards of empires. Yet the ideas it produced in those decades would echo for thousands of years. And yet, the shadow never left. The same democracy that gave the world a new idea of freedom kept slaves, silenced its women, and in the end, voted to put Socrates to death for the crime of asking too many questions. Athens is not a perfect ancestor. It is a mirror. It shows us how far a single idea that ordinary people can rule themselves can reach, and how far, even now, it still has to go. Follow Embered Ages for more of the ancient world brought to life by firelight.